So why do self-defense techniques fail? The main reason self-defense techniques fail because it has to be a strategy, not just a technique. If you're responding to someone already doing something to you, you've already lost. What you have to do is use your situational awareness ahead of time, which will give you an idea of what you're facing to one, know if you can actually handle it or need to escape, and two, understand if you can actually handle it appropriately. If you can't handle it appropriately, don't get involved. That's very important. A number of people, what they'll do is they'll go to a self-defense seminar or a self-defense class in college. It may take a couple of weeks, so on and so forth. But what usually happens is you can't remember the technique. That's the issue. You can't remember the technique. And because you can't remember the technique, you find yourself scrambling. So, what would be a better way to go about this? Well, first and foremost, you need to utilize situational awareness. Now, for me, one of the better ways that I have learned to describe situational awareness is OODA loop, OODA. Observe, orient, decide, and act. You can look this up on the internet. There's been papers written on it. There's been military papers written on it. And it was actually, the formula was actually created by a Air Force pilot by the name of Colonel John Boyd. So you can look that information up and see that there's a basis and is actually used in military operation as well. So you go into any situation and you step out onto your deck or approach your car in a parking lot or go into a store or school, whatever. You need to observe as much as you can everything around you. After you have observed everything around you, then you need to orient yourself to things in that environment. It could be people, it could be animals, it could be obstacles. It could be obstacles that you can't see around that you need to be aware of. Approaching your car. When you parked, your car was by itself. Now there's two white vans parked on both sides of it. So these are all red flags that would come about after you orient yourself about what's going on. Then what you need to do on your orientation, also look for weapons of opportunity just in case you need to do something in a self-defense situation. After you do those two things, then we go to decide. You have to decide what you can and cannot do. If you're an excellent runner and you see the situation such that you need to run, give yourself the opportunity to run. And this is not about ego and how close can I get to someone. Get away as quickly as possible. We're talking about self-defense. And the reason I point to self-defense, this gentleman by the name of Ian Abernathy, who I thought did an excellent job in describing what he calls the Marshall Map. In the Marshall Map, he describes martial arts, fighting, and self-defense as three circles which overlap each other. Are there techniques in martial arts and self-defense that you can use in fighting? Absolutely. Do you each have components of self-defense techniques? Absolutely. But the goals are different. The goals in fighting are to win. Period. If I am in a competition, MMA, boxing, Muay Thai, the list goes on. If I'm in a competition, my goal is to win. Well, if you think about that from a self-defense situation, if you're focused on one person, you might get blindsided by someone else. You never know who's with somebody. So you can't operate from that standpoint. If I deal with this one person, I'm good. When it comes to martial arts has a self-defense component, right? You can use the techniques that you find in various martial arts that can help you in a self-defense. But everything is not made for everything. And I have to say that. And the reason I have to say that is because, one, different things for different times. So you would have to augment what you do to fit what's going on right now. Two, and this is something that I have seen in my personal experience in almost 30 years in martial arts and self-defense. If something doesn't work, often we go back to our instructor, our sifu, our senpai, or Kubiden, or sensei, whatever the title is, and we say, sir, I tried to do that, or ma'am, I tried to do that, it didn't work. And you might hear you need to train harder, okay? It may have been that wasn't the best thing to do for that situation. So again, with martial arts, It's mind, body, spirit, culture, self-defense. It has so many different aspects. And I know myself personally in my martial arts career, there were times where I felt like, I could just handle anyone because I knew this or I knew that. But in a self-defense situation, things change quickly, dramatically. So you can't focus on this is the way to do it. You're having to respond to what's going on. Now, with self-defense in of itself, the goal is to get home whatever way you can. If it means I can run and go home, I'm going to run. If it means that I might have to control something so I can get into a better position, I try to control it. If it means that I have to fight, I want to use my footwork. I want to use my movement to put myself in a better situation. And I don't stay there and try to stomp the guy out or the gal out, right? What I do is I continue to attack until it's safe to leave. That's way more important than showing yourself as the victor and raising your hand. Because again, you don't know who's with who. So you have to pay attention to what you're doing. Hopefully that makes sense. So again, if you defend, and let me add one additional comment. When it comes to self-defense, it's better to understand your situational awareness and the concepts by which your techniques work versus the techniques themselves. Why? Because again, a technique will fail you because of the other person, because of how they moved, because of how you moved. And you may have to change things. So you have to understand the concept, not just the technique. There's an old saying, if I teach you a technique, you'll have a technique. But if I teach you a concept, you'll have 1,000 techniques. And this is the idea that you should be promoting in your school, with your students. I promote it with my students. They need to understand why, not just do. They need to understand why, and that will better prepare them in the self-defense situation. Thank you so much for your time. See you next time.